Sticking with the theme of industry versus the environment, the government appointed a new independent commissioner for fracking this week, and it's a familiar face from the East Midlands. Natasha Engels was the Labour MP for North East Derbyshire, but she lost that seat in 2017. Some say it was actually her support for fracking in an area where there are plans to drill for shale gas, which cost her that job. Here's our political editor, Tony Rowe.
On the air selling the benefits of fracking, the former Derbyshire Labour MP Natasha Engels appointed by a Conservative government as an independent commissioner for shale gas, a policy Labour object to.
Until people are reassured that it can be done safely and that it has been done safely, you can't really start having a conversation about, the benefits to energy security.
Until last year, Natasha Engels was the MP for North East Derbyshire, where permission's been granted to begin exploratory drilling for shale gas. Initially, she opposed it, but she's changed her mind and is now pro-fracking.
The role is independent of government, but it isn't impartial. And I think that's really important to emphasise, that I do have a point of view on fracking and on shale gas exploration. And in the same way that those people who are in those public meetings have very, very strong feelings against fracking, I think it's really important that actually an alternative point of view and sort of widening out of the debate happens.
Back in Derbyshire, some say her enthusiasm for fracking was one of the reasons she lost the seat.
My position during the general election campaign was something that a lot of people did oppose, but there were also another whole group of people who were glad that it was widening out the debate and who respected my position and that it was different and that I was prepared to stand for something that seemed very unpopular.
And do you think that did cost you the job as MP then?
No, I don't actually. What was really fascinating was that Marsh Lane was the area where the application was, and there's a small area around Marsh Lane where when you knocked on doors people did raise it as an issue. Outside those areas nobody mentions it.
Campaigners on her former patch aren't happy with her new position.
This is a beautiful land, this is where we live, and to see it scarred with a new fossil fuel industry at a time when we need to be moving away from fossil fuels into renewable energy, it doesn't make sense. And to appoint somebody to take the taxpayers' money to espouse the views of the fossil fuel industry is a step backwards.
With the news on Friday that after a legal challenge, fracking for shale gas can go ahead for the first time in the UK since it was linked with earthquakes in 2011, Natasha Engels will likely have more communities to explain her arguments to.
Before we get into the rights and wrongs of fracking, what do you make of a former Labour MP taking a job in the first place from a Conservative government?
Well, I think Natasha has done a lot of research into fracking. She was supportive of it when it didn't do her any good, and I sort of recognise it as a genuinely held belief. It's not one that I agree with, but I don't dispute her right to earn a living promoting something that she believes in.
Here she is, going directly against Labour Party policy.
Well, she is, and she was quite upfront about the fact she disagreed with our policy during the general election. I think it is important that Labour Party are in a position that would not see these fracking developments go ahead, and so any of Natasha's former constituents who want to stop it could do that by having a Labour government. But it is, people have got the right to have difference of opinion to their party, and so I respect the fact she's come to that conclusion, even if I disagree with the conclusion she's come to.
Bit of a coup for your party though, Andrew, wasn't it?
I always support people having different views to the party. Natasha is very well respected. She was a Deputy Speaker in the House of Commons and she's got cross-party respect. I think she'll be an excellent appointment for this role. It's very contentious and there are hardcore beliefs on both sides, and I think she's a reasonable person who'll listen to her.
She clearly believes in fracking.
And I do too, as long as it's done responsibly. I mean, it's a fact that the site up in Preston, currently under development, is the most monitored oil or gas site in the world currently, and it surely will be, and it'll all have to be done as friendly to the environment as possible.
But it can't be. We've just had the report from the IPCC this week warning us of a climate catastrophe, and we owe it to our children that we stand up and that we go to let me please speak, that we change to renewables. We must move away from fossil fuels, and investing in very expensive fracking, even if it was possible to do safely, which I don't believe in, is absolutely ludicrous, and it uses huge amounts amount of water, which is another environmental concern, and it's an eyesore, and we have the technology to actually invest into renewables, which would actually increase a lot of jobs, real jobs.
But I'm all for green technologies, but when we're running on green technologies, we have to have fossil fuel technologies in the background ticking over, waiting in case the eco systems break down. If the wind doesn't blow, we've got to fire at Ratcliffe on Shore Power Station.
Tidal power, you know, there was always movement in the seaside. Why not? Why has your government not done this? We're an island. We could have a real, interesting, thriving new industry.
Put the kettle on tonight, can you? That we might have tidal power sometime.
We have the technology. Sorry, I'm not making this up.
We're quite far from the coast, but I get your point. Toby Perkins, your party would ban fracking. The exploratory drilling in North East Derbyshire is actually happening potentially happening very close to your constituency. Would you support the protesters on this?
No, I mean, I think our party's policy is clear that we're not convinced that fracking is safe, and we're also believe that the costs associated to the local community, all of the environmental upheaval, are not worth it. And I think it is absolutely legitimate to say that this government's got an appalling record on renewable investment. We've seen the Swansea Bay tidal lagoon that they've cancelled. We've seen them disincentivising solar. We should be seeing much more investment in wind. There is a question about how we get from where we are now to the post-fossil era, and I think we need more investment in nuclear. But you know, absolutely, this is a government with an appalling record on renewable investment.
I agree in that one.
We're shutting down Ratcliffe on Shore Power Station. Gas is far more beneficial to the environment than coal. We're moving in the right direction.
Well, Natasha Engels says that her new job is to offer advice to communities and act as a bridge between them and the drilling companies. But she believes fracking has important benefits for the whole country if it's handled properly.
I looked into it because it was happening in the constituency, so I travelled around and I talked to people. I tried to find out about it. I talked to the regulators, and I did become convinced that fracking was a process. It was actually, you know, a very interesting new piece of technology. That there was no real material difference between fracking for gas and doing it in the conventional way, and that, you know, once you strip away the sort of the fear factor that people were going to die, that their houses were going to collapse, that the water was going to be poisoned, and once you sort of strip those sort of things away, and hopefully if people can see that we've got some of the best regulations in the world.
Natasha Engels, the new fracking commissioner. Kat Berger, the government says it will strictly monitor the industry, and the UK has a long record of managing coal and oil exploration. So basically they're saying it can be done safely.
I don't buy it. We have seen in Lancashire there were earthquakes and house prices collapsed. We don't know what to do yet with the water, because 50% of the water that is lost, the other 50% is poisoned, is actually has got some radiation. So we don't know what to do.
That we need to strip away also the fear factor here. Isn't that part of the fear factor?
But no, these are facts. We don't know how to treat the water yet.
2.2 kilometres below the ground. It's well below any aquifers that are going to be accessed for human consumption.
But still, the water we use, and this is a lot of water, how do you treat it? It is actually has got radiation. It went from Blackpool. It was seen as radioactive waste because it was so strong.
Toby, what do you think about this? I mean, you know, there's a lot of hype around some of this, but many of the areas that we're talking about right here in the East Midlands that could be affected are former mining areas.
Well, they are, but I think
they're well used to this. I mean, Ollerton is very well used to mini quakes.
Yeah, what you've got to remember is that the pits originally arrived in areas that communities built around the pits. Now, those communities now exist, so industrialising a residential area is different to the original creation of the pits 100, 150 years ago. I think the fact is we haven't got the vast deserts they've got in America. This is going to be much more difficult to do on an industrial scale. The impacts on local community are far more dangerous. So for good reasons, the Labour government said we need further investment in renewables rather than going down the route of this unproven technology. And the only way people are going to prevent fracking is get a Labour government.
Or Green, actually. I'm sorry, we've been saying this much longer than Labour, and we keep talking about climate change, and not many people are doing this. This is the biggest catastrophe we're going to be seeing, and particularly our kids. And it doesn't seem to bring any urgency up in politicians or the government. I don't understand why. So vote Green if you really want to tackle the environment.
And also get some candles in if you're voting Green.
No, that's nonsense.
And that is it from the Sunday Politics.